Hello, everyone. Nick here. Hope you're all doing well today. It is currently December 31st, 2025, 11 o'clock p.m., the final hour of the year on the final day. And I thought it would be fun to go ahead and finish up the last Deadtime Storybook, number 17, Fairy Tale. Starting with the cover, we have the fairies, the horned, pointy-eared, looks like some creepy yellow-eyed um, goblin-looking ones. Next, in this boy's bedroom, you can kind of see him there just laying down. What's really creepy is this one looking at him, like waiting for him to get up so he can scare him. Pretty horrifying. What's really interesting is this one, the direction it's looking in. That is interesting that it's not facing or looking forward at you. I think that would have been more creepy, but otherwise, decent cover. Love the blue and the red here. That's always a nice combo. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get into the book and see what this fairy tale is like. Going into the book, we have our main protagonist, Colin McKay. He has a twin brother named Quint McKay. And the book starts off in their room. Colin is on the bottom bunk of the bunk bed, and Quint is on the top. And Colin is woken up by the spooky fairies from the cover of the book. Though in the book they have wings and they don't have them in the cover, an inaccuracy, but have the warts and the creepy yellow eyes, and the fairy has a pair of pliers and it's trying to pull out Colin's teeth, which is pretty horrifying. So, of course, Colin screams, wakes up Quint, and Colin feels pretty embarrassed because he doesn't want to say, hey, there was this weird looking fairy thing that wanted to pull my teeth out. He chalked it up to a bad dream. Boys and their characteristic. Colin is the twin that prefers to read. He likes horror books, he likes fantasy books, he enjoys comic books, and Quint is more of the one that enjoys sports, playing all kinds of sports during the, sports season in school. Though they are similar in how they like to dress and what they like to eat. Says it was just a bad dream, and Quint kind of makes fun of him a little bit because apparently at one point Colin thought he saw the Tooth Fairy and aliens. So, and then the next night, Colin actually gets attacked by the fairy, and so the boys then come up with a plan to ambush them the next night because they still want to get their teeth. The next night, the boys are ready. The fairy comes out, and they ambush the fairies. And the fairies, multiple fairies come, and they start pulling their hair out. They start pulling pieces of their clothing out of the closet. Whenever the winged creatures retreat, they find on the floor a tiny scroll, and it's tied up with a golden ribbon. I'm sorry, a golden bow. So they open the bow, and in there is a poem, and I will read it as follows. We fairies, we are. Fairies we are we. No longer apart we shall stay. We are not whole, and ye shall find that ye need we, and we need ye. Together the brothers McKay. Deep in the woods, where the hill is steep, we await ye one last day. Then the sun disappears, and ye shall find that yours is ours, and ours is thine, to claim the brothers McKay. Come into the woods, escape your flight. When the moon rises over the hill, a trail will lead you. Find the way, that a place that we can be, and so shall ye forever, the brothers McKay. So we kind of get a hint at how the story will progress from the poem. The brothers decide, well, we don't want to be harassed by these fairy things anymore. So in the poem, they find that they can meet these fairies deep in the woods at this hill. And so the goal now is to make their way to the hill. Next day, they go to the public library and they find whatever books they can on fairies. They read about all different kinds of fairies, though none of them come up any kind of conclusion as to what these particular horned fairies are that keep harassing them. As they prepare and gear up, they, are going to find some woods, and they pick the woods behind their elementary school. Behind the elementary school is a deep woods, and the kids are not allowed to go in those woods, as kids shouldn't. But that's where they start, and they sneak there behind the school, and they find a trail of white pebbles. And they think, okay, we're on the right path to the hill. It's a sign. So they follow the white pebbles until they make it to a tree with a sign, and it's all mossy and stuff. And it says Reject Ridge, the area that they're heading into. So as they continue on through this area called Reject Ridge, they encounter a boy and girl in suspenders underneath a tree, Hankel and Gretzel. Quinn has a laugh and points out, oh, like Hansel and Gretel, from the fairy tale. And they're like, who is that? No, I'm Hankel, and this is my sister Gretzel. And we wandered here in the forest. As it plays out, they're on their way and they find a gingerbread house or a candy house, just like in Hansel and Gretel. And Colin and Quinn are like, oh, we know what's going to happen. Let's get out of here before the witch comes. But of course, they get stopped in their track, and the witch captures them, and she says, where are you going? You're nice and, plump children, because Hankel and Gretchen are not plump. They are too skinny for the witch. Let those rejects can, eat the house, because, when Hankel and Gretchen saw the house, they went immediately over to start eating it, of course, just like in the original fairy tale. And she puts Colin and Quint in a cage, and she weighs them to decide who she's going to eat first. And it turns out Quint is just a pound heavier than Colin. She makes Colin get out and prepare the bread and put it in the oven for her to, of course, eat and cook Quint as the first meal in her pot. Colin is trying to figure out a way to save his brother. And he opens up the oven, the big iron door oven, and the witch is like, is that bread done? And he's like, oh, I don't know, maybe halfway done. And the witch is like, it can't just be halfway done, or it can't just be both cooked and raw. It's one or the other. And so she goes to inspect the bread, and Colin pushes her in, closes the door, quickly grabs the key on the table to unlock the cage, frees his brother. So you can kind of see where this is going. As they're running through, they encounter a blonde girl with a blue jacket, and she's peeking behind the tree. They're like, how long have you been following us? And she says, for a little while. And so she introduces herself. Her name is Blue, and she's on her way to her grandfather's house to deliver him some stuff. They go to the house. There's like some food there, and they want to eat the food. And then all of a sudden, you hear Blue in her grandfather's room, and she says, oh, grandfather, what big ears you have. And of course, the grandfather says, oh, yes, the better to hear you with, my dear. Realize, oh, Little Red Riding Hood. So Colin quickly runs. The wolf, dressed as a grandfather, has eaten Blue and has eaten his brother Quint. So a chase ensues, and the wolf says, ah, dessert. Colin is running and encounters a huntsman in the woods. And it's the huntsman from Snow White. And he's like, oh man, this huntsman, don't kill me. And the huntsman says, what? I'm not going to kill you. He's like, I'm going through the woods. I'm trying to find Snow Black and get her heart for Queen Maggie. But he's a nice huntsman in this book, and he helps him out. He tells him about the wolf, and he's like, I know where to get a heart from you. He's like, oh, I'd do anything to get, a heart to show Queen Maggie. So they concoct a plan, and they capture the wolf. I guess he doesn't want to cut them out of the wolf's belly. So he's like, let's make a really gross concoction to throw up, your brother and Blue and all them. Colin runs back to the cabin that Blue's grandfather lives in, creates this disgusting, vile concoction, and the wolf gets trapped in this pit. And the wolf's like, I'll do anything, just please let me out of this pit. I want to be free. And the huntsman's like, deal, you have to drink this stuff. So the wolf drinks the stuff, regurgitates Blue, Quint, Blue Riding Hood's grandfather, and the huntsman agrees to let the wolf go. They go back to the cabin, they clean up, they eat with the grandfather and little Blue Riding Hood, and then they're off back on their journey to get to the hill to see the fairies. So they get stuck in like this quicksand, or so they think it's quicksand. It's actually like waste. And they encounter a motorcycle gang, and the motorcycle gang is the Seven Dwarfs. But instead of happy, dopey, we are met with Motley, Wimpy, Stud, Curly, Pigs, Pee-wee, and Dapper. They got the chains on their pants, and they've got the bandanas on their bikes. And so they come back and you save the boys from the pit, and they take them back to the shop and decorated with motorbikes and things like that. My favorite characters in the whole book series. I thought it was so funny having the Seven Dwarfs as like a motorcycle biker gang. So they're having a good time. I think it's Motley playing the guitar while they're out by the fire. Colin falls asleep and he dreams that he's back in his house with Quint. He's like, oh, it was just a dream, and he's so happy. And then here comes his parents, but they're fairies, and they have them for breakfast. And of course, Colin's freaking out. He wakes up, and he's still there with the dwarves. So that was a dream, not the whole them being in the woods with these fairy rejects. And all of a sudden, here come the brownie elves, and they've come to challenge the dwarfs, and they're a little bit smaller. Instead of them throwing fists or having weapons, they do insults. They go back and forth with these insults, and the dwarfs win, and the brownies are defeated because they can't come up with better insult jokes. And then the dwarfs, of course, lead the boys to the right path of going to the hill. They make it to the hill. There's a white fence, but it's really small. So they have to shrink down to fairy size to go and see the queen of the fairies. And she is actually the former tooth fairy. And she tells them that Bogarts is who they encountered in the beginning of the book, and they're terrible tooth fairies. And she says, then that's where you and your brother Colin come in. Turns out that they are changelings, which are fairies, are taken from their homes, humans. And so they were stolen by the McKays, their mom and dad. So the twins are actually fairies, and that's why and they've requested that they arrive to fulfill their duties. And it turns out the Bogarts had taken scraps from their clothes and parts from their hair and their teeth and made like these voodoo dolls to complete some ritual. And so, of course, the boys are freaking out. This can't be. So they run back home and grow back to larger size. They encounter the huntsman again on horse, but of course, he's a nice guy and he directs them out of the woods. So, as they return home, they realize, oh, it's not so late yet. Their parents don't realize that they, left. They go back in. They hug their mom and dad. They're just happy to be home and hoping things, go back to normal after this whole ordeal. And so that night, something happens. As Colin is in his bed, he starts to shrink again and he starts to sprout wings. And then they're both freaking out and they're fairies now. And then out the window, they hear knocking. The Queen Fairy, and she says, I decided to give you two one more day with the McKays, but now it's time to go and fulfill your fairy duties now. And that's where the book ends. This book was, more funny, I think, and I thought it was, a pretty decent one to leave off on. And I thought it was really sweet that the sisters, A.G. Cascone, dedicated the book to the deadheads or the children at the time, that really enjoyed these books. Probably a lot of you watching now. Again, I don't overly love these books, they're just very decent, but I think I would give it an 8 just because I really like the Fairy Reject character. And at one point, I did forget to mention there was another encounter with Rumpelstiltskin or Stiltskin's rump, letting them over the fiery brook. You guys didn't say Stiltskin's rump, did you? Because that would have been bad. So he gives it away and they beat him and he falls into the brook because that was the agreement. If they did not guess in three guesses, they would fall into the brook, fiery brook. So that was the Deadtime Stories series. Thank you so much for joining me and going through all these. I'm excited to start another series here soon. We will probably go and look at some of the other supplemental material in the Deadtime Story universe soon. If you've read this book, what do you think? And thank you again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.